And we are live. Welcome everybody in Mining for Vervaeke episode 13. We have a different studio with us, and because of the number or maybe the item or subject, some technical difficulties, I hope you will forgive us. It's my first time live streaming with StreamYard. Okay. With me in the studio, members of the Awakening from Dominion Crisis Discord server. I have Algernon in the studio, Harris from Upcycle Club, and Joshua. We are talking about the state of flow. So, Joshua, would you like to read the definition?
I'd love to. The state of flow describes a mental state in which a person is completely focused on a single task or activity. They are directing all of their attention towards the task, and they do not experience many thoughts about themselves or their performance. Some people refer to this informally as being in the zone. The concept of flow comes from the field of positive psychology, in which the study of things that help humans thrive, which is the study of things that help humans thrive. Csikszentmihalyi, who was an influential part of the movement. There's no. That was it. Yeah, that's all I got.
That's it. Okay. Yeah, he coined the term. I put the entire thing in the description to that video. Okay. So, Harris, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, basically, that description is quite good. It captures the main gist of the notion of the flow state, or the flow mode, as I call it sometimes. But I believe that the term flow state, it's a better one, it's the appropriate one. As it has been said, this notion originated from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. I have some difficulty pronouncing that name. That he developed the notion during wartime. So this is something, while researching a bit into his background, I caught a talk of him and describing that while he was in the apartment during airstrikes, he was having a game of chess that it was really interesting one, let's say. And it was there that he realized that he zoned into the game, both him and his opponent. And that's where the getting into the zone bit came. And because he was in that flow state, all the noises around them, they didn't matter in a way. So that was the origin of the term. Of course, as it is the case with all scientific theories and toy models that they are found in science, most of the time a theory gets, let's say, modified, or it gets, let's say, extended or even revised. So in the case of the flow state theory, Professor John Vervaeke actually extended it into his own work, let's say, in terms of cognitive science. So overall, I find it a very intriguing notion and an interesting one, and that is highly relevant and during our times, our modern times.
Thank you, Harris. Also, welcome everybody in the studio. Because we are testing the new technology today, I will be able to display your comments on the screen.
Uh-oh.
Have you been able to hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. So, Algernon, Would you like to add to Harris?
I guess the thing, like I'm trying to think about like the practical aspects and where I think I've experienced flow in my own life. And it's interesting because there's a positive valent type of flow which like Csikszentmihalyi is talking about, increased productivity and increased creativity. And we often will talk about sculpting or painting or dancing, or in the case you just brought up, an intense chess game where their entire capability, and in their case probably quite substantial capability, is absorbed in the moment. And so I think the ability to entirely absorb your attention on one thing, is a practice of focus. I'm not sure it's always a good thing, because I can think of other situations that have almost all the attributes, maybe all the attributes that we describe with flow, but that are negatively valent. And so like one of those is television watching. So we get into like a movie and you're sitting there, but so your body, like the chess game, your body is not engaged, but you are intensely focused on the drama that's going on there, especially if there's a giant screen TV and good sound and da da da. And so you get fully absorbed in that drama and undistracted by your own life, undistracted by worry, thoughts, whatever. And you go into if it's a good story, and you just go into that. And so I think there's a type of flow that occurs just watching television. I'm open to discussion on that, but anyway, that occurred to me.
I mean, the only thing I would say to that is I don't think flow is simply just intense focus. Like I wouldn't consider watching television as like like being in the flow state. Like I think being in a flow state has to do with it's an intense focus, it's a tense sense of 1 minute, as you described, Algernon, but it's also you're picking up, it's a state in which you're optimally picking up on patterns. Your capacity to pick up patterns is really high, and your capacity for insight is really high. And I'm not sure that watching television maps onto that very well. But so for flow state, John describes 3 conditions for the flow state. Or he describes the conditions that allow for the flow for you to be in the flow state. Which is that the demands of the task go slightly beyond your skills. And if the demands are too high, then you feel anxiety. But if the demands are too low, then you're bored. So it's kind of like that, that place, like that optimal zone of development. His 3 conditions is tight feedback between what you do and how the environment responds. Failure matters, and it's clear. The information is clear. So those are the 3 conditions that he describes. So
I think to that point, at least with my TV example, the thing that strikes me that's most lacking, like there's absorption of the person, but there's not a real interaction. There could be a perceived interaction from the person's point of view who's watching the TV program, but they're not actual. Like the TV, obviously, the story is not going to change based on their reaction.
Right.
At least not for a couple of years.
Like you're in the case of watching television, you're just a passive observer.
Yeah, but there's a lot going on in your head. So I mean, it interacts with your thoughts, and you can be watching a complicated plot that's unfolding and be very aware of all sorts of nuance and really there are ways to watch a movie where you absorb your full attention if you pay attention to all the details, the music and everything else. So it can be, I'm just saying that can be an example. And you can have time pass, loss of self, full engagement, sort of immune to sounds in the other room. There's a lot that overlaps there. And maybe there's some different because you're not really interacting with the television signal. You just kind of think you are.
Actually, while listening to the two of you discussing about the television example, it popped into my mind a particular cartoon that at some point it paused and it said, can you find Walto? So it had like a picture, let's say, where there was like a tiny, let's say, character, the protagonist, let's say, of that cartoon. And the viewers, the kids or whatever, they were trying to focus in order to find that particular character that was hidden, let's say, inside the bigger screen. So in that moment, I think everyone was into the zone. So, yeah.
I think if I understand the state of flow correctly, it's like this hyper focus on something, and it kind of shades away the rest. In a way, you can watch a movie in a flow state. You basically full on immersed. I know when I had been to IMAX, I completely did not see the entire world. I know it was imposed on me through the glasses and the sounds and the kind of comfortable isolating seats. Oh, where is Wally? So where's Walda?
I made a correction, yeah.
I actually really like the fact that I can now show the audience. Interacting with audience, that's what makes it the best while streaming live. Yeah, shout out to StreamYard, thank you. So in a way, it's the level of your immersion into doing something. How much do you kind of shed away the other stuff? And I sometimes write or compose music in a state of flow, or sometimes I make myself, but my mind is elsewhere. So I'm like doing stuff mechanically, not even noticing. So yeah. Sorry. Okay. Guys, what would you say? I will play a clip and we will discuss it. The clip is from John Vervaeke describing the secrets of flow, all the attributes, let's say. Yeah. I would appreciate your thoughts on it. And thank you, Harris, for providing it. Okay, let's see how the sharing part works. Yep. If you can't hear it, please let me know. Okay. There you go. Is it on the screen? Hope so.
The defining features of the flow state is people feel at one with their environment. This goes to what I was saying a few minutes ago. There's this enlivening, enriching of a sense of contact and the perspectival. Everything is super salient. There's an ongoing sense of discovery. You're getting super present. You just know how to do it. And it just flows, hence the word, it just flows from you. And what's really important is that the flow state is optimal for people. They think they're at their best, and they'll say it's one of the best experiences they had, one of the most rewarding, even more rewarding than pleasure. So much so that asking people how frequently they get into the flow state is a good predictor of their sense of well-being. And so here's the point I want to make about that. Flow is about really realizing the transjectivity, the connectedness, and how much it contributes to a sense of agency and meaning for people.
Oh my God. Okay. So the movie example, I don't know if it would come in handy, because actually the flow state has to be generative. It has to contribute to the meaning. What are your thoughts on that? Harris, I would like you to start.
Yeah, basically what he said, that you need to feel at one, let's say, with the environment, and you heavily invest into it. You actually derive what John said in that clip, a profound sense of pleasure arising out of it. I will try to offer a different example from my experience. I see this happening not into, let's say, the passive example of the audience watching, let's say, a movie. Maybe I can see it more into a premiere in a cinema, where everything is augmented, and you feel the vibes of the audience, and you feel as part of it. But an even better example will be the case where there is a band and they are having this live jamming session. And whenever they are getting it to a good vibe, let's say, everyone really benefits from it, and you can they can feel it, they can understand it, and realize that this melody or this tune is worth it. And if in case someone else is sitting there in the audience listening, they will also appreciate it. So this is another example that I wanted to offer here. So it has to do with the focus and how it flows, as John said.
Matthew?
Matthew is muted.
You're muted.
Ignore what I just said. Another example of a place where I see flow is with regard to music, is someone playing piano, where they're having to engage the left side of their mind and the right side of their mind and their body, like both hands, both feet, and you're listening, and you're reading music, and you're trying to emote into the music. I mean, a concert pianist who's doing a good job of it is almost certainly in flow the entire time, I would think. I'm not a concert pianist, so I can't speak for them. But something there about the full engagement, and I would say there's a pushback there, because in the case of playing piano, you're hitting the notes and the chords, you're hearing the results of it, you're making minute adjustments. Like there's play, like you're not just robotically repeating what's on the page. So there's an interaction with what's actually going on in the performance of playing the music on the piano. And so I think that back and forth, that continual readjustment and interaction with what is, if you were painting or even writing, but writing less pushback, but painting or sculpting, skiing, where you're having to maneuver down a terrain, anything where you've got to interact with the world in a physical way. All of those things, I think, are really good examples of a flow state. I'm interested in talking about where, like what John said, about what maybe the benefits are of seeking it or trying to set a fertile ground for it. But I will pass.
To Josh? Yeah, Josh.
I guess I'll just talk about my experiences being in the flow state, which is like there's something magical about it. There's something where it feels like somehow everything you do is like perfect. Like there's a perfection to everything you do. And like you're like, if I'm playing soccer, it's like my feet are in the exact right position to pass the ball, to get, like, it's like I somehow mysteriously know what to do, and I'm just, it's like perfect. That's the, like, the feeling that I get when I'm in that state. And I think part of the mystery of it, part of that sense of like it, is that a lot of it is happening unconsciously. A lot of the skills and a lot of all of this capacity is happening unconsciously. Like the pick, like John talks about implicit learning, which is this unconscious pattern recognition that's happening. And I think it's when you're in the flow state, this implicit learning is heightened. So you're picking up on a bunch of complex patterns, and it's increasing your performance in the task or activity. So.
Thank you. The question from the audience: what is the difference between being hypnotized and the flow state? The difference between being hypnotized and the flow state. I will, without knowing what is actually the difference, my first intuition would be to say the agency part. So when you are hypnotized, you surrender your agency to the outside source. Your body still knows the mechanisms, but the kind of outside brain controls you in a way. Also, your defenses are down, and somebody else enters your kind of being. You can still, I don't know if it's really the flow state, but you kind of surrender yourself. You can do all the magical things. You can do more than when you are controlled by yourself. Yeah. So I guess the agency part.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I can add something to that.
Yeah.
First of all, Kara, your intuition is correct. I agree with what you just said. Secondly, I just wanted to clarify a bit that basically hypnosis and the flow state are two completely distinct psychological states, but they do share some similarities. So one of them is this conscious awareness, let's say, that is one of the key differences. Because in the flow states, the individual maintains a high level of conscious awareness and engagement with the task at hand. They are fully focused, they are immersed, and they are in full control of their actions. But during hypnosis, the individuals, let's say, typically experience a state of loss of consciousness, or they have a reduced awareness, let's say, of their surroundings. And in fact, this is what makes them, let's say, receptive to the suggestion coming from the hypnotist. And just to push it a bit further, there is another type of distinction that has to do with the fact that flow is typically voluntary state, where the individual conscious agent enters into it, let's say, and finds joy in it. But hypnosis, it's involuntary. So it is actually a state of induced by an external agent, let's say, like the case of the hypnotist or the mesmer, as they used to call them before.
I'm going to chime in this one and use an example. I'll play the counterpoint of surfing. So in the case of, like, if you're surfing, let's say you're doing a good surfing wave and you are in a tube. I don't even know the terminology anymore. So you've caught a tube and you're in it. You're pretty much in the moment. You are interacting with that environment, balance, the wave, wind, the spray, everything. You don't have a lot of agency. Like agency feels like the wrong word there. Like you are fully in contact and fully flowing with the environment, hydrology notwithstanding there, but you have to be fully in the moment and fully engaged. And so I could see that being a full example of flow. And versus hypnosis, I wonder if you couldn't cast it and say that the person who is hypnotized is accepting the hypnotist as part of their environment. And so therefore, following the hypnotist's suggestion is just going along with their environment in a non, if the hypnotist says you're a duck, they're like, I'm a duck. Like that's an example of kind of going with the flow if you're accepting what the hypnotist says as sort of part of the environment. So if you're flowing with it. So casting it just in terms of like your will is I think not quite right, just because of things like surfing where your will is not really what's at play there.
I mean, when you're surfing, there's still an agent that's interacting. That there's still you still have skills that you're implementing when you're surfing, right? So if you were like hypnotized, then you wouldn't be able to skillfully maneuver the surfboard in any way.
I would make no claims about what you can do hypnotized. But anyway, it's just I don't think the two phenomena are entirely separate. I think there's some overlap in there, just because, well, they're both big concepts.
The question then becomes: can zombies surf? So
Can what?
Can zombies surf? So
Can zombies get some guy out there with a pocket watch? Now surf.
Yeah. Interesting.
Have to ask Scott Adams. Shout out, Scott Adams.
Scott Adams. Shout out to Scott Adams, of course. With the flow states, I have a personal story. I was fully engaged in a conversation with somebody while playing a volleyball game. So I was responding to a question, absolutely animated, and people started saying, "Look what you just did!" And I was like, "What did I just do?" And I, while I was talking, I did not even know that my hands were pushing the ball away, and I kind of scored like some epic goal. I'm sure my memory fails me, but let's say it was the best kind of shot humankind ever seen. But it's just the thing is, I did not even know. My whole brain was fully immersed in the conversation with the person on my team about unrelated subject. And so I was kind of wondering, there was no agency there in pushing the ball away. My agency was fully on having a conversation, my attention, my will, let's say.
As you recall it.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure you're the one who moved your arms. So to claim no agency and being able to hit a volleyball is a bit too much, too far, right? Like, somebody did that. So part of your brain, you might not have been your whatever part that you were most thinking about there, but some part of you was following that ball, tracking the trajectory, anticipating it.
But this is the unconscious part. The unconscious part of her
brain, but
right?
It's still an agent. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's just like someone's still hitting that ball.
Harris?
No, I agree with what Alkernon said. There is no way that it was 0%, so it was lower, and you actually perceive it as being quite minuscule. And I think this is what is going on while we drive. We have this semi-autonomous, let's say, operation going on, and we can do other things. So it's not only like we are both maybe we are driving and we are engaging in really complex conversations that go with the flow, let's say, allows us to enter into the flow state. So yeah, I think it has to do with the paresthetic nature of the mind. Like we engage into one activity, and something else gets backgrounded, and we excel at the thing that we consciously focus on. But that doesn't mean that the other things are not there. And just to conclude this point, if that was the case, then we people we will die because we will forget how to breathe. But breathing is unconscious, let's say. So there is no way for us to consciously stop when doing that. So something like that along those lines.
That raises reminded me of an example where I've encountered kind of reaching my limit, which is, I don't know, embarrassingly low. I was driving my car and listening to an audiobook, and I'm going down the highway, and there wasn't much going on, and I could follow the story that was being told to me in the audio fine. So I was, with the characters in the story, plus I'm driving the car. And then as soon as I needed to get off the highway and get to an interchange, and there's traffic light, and there's some other cars, and I've got to interact with them, and now this guy's braking, and then, I got to check this. Somewhere in there, I realized I'm not listening to the story anymore. I'm driving, which is good because I chose the right one to pay attention to. But I lost the story. So I'd have to, back up in the audio track and say, all right, I wasn't really listening to that last part. And I think that's because I maxed out on my attention. Like I could do basic driving, sort of rote driving, and listening to that story and keep my mind in the story, as it were. But then when real things started happening where more of my capacity had to be given to the driving, I had to let go of something, and I let go of the story.
Yeah, actually, what you just said with the focus, let's say, and the capacity of our attention, it happens to me while watching videos on YouTube. Let's say a lecture from John. If I speed it up,
Yeah.
I reach my limit at some point. So I cannot do it at times 2. Let's say I can do it at 1.5. Or 1.75, but I cannot do it the whole thing because then my attention moves beyond that upper boundary, let's say, that I have, and I cannot focus on it. So yeah.
So I wonder if this flow state, if you can get all the way up to your capacity, or even maybe you're pushing it a little further, like in the example of challenging yourself, where you're trying to go beyond your maximum capability. So you're trying to take on that one edge more. And if you can maintain that for a period of time, then you get really absorbed in the task or whatever you're doing.
Yeah. And maybe this is what takes place, sometimes in the Olympic Games, we get to see, in rare occasions, but we get to see one athlete breaking the world record, and then another one breaking that same one, only for it to be broken again, all in the same, let's say, session. So maybe sometimes it has to do also with this drive that arises from the competition, let's say, or even from the environment. And now I'm trying to tie this up back to the example with the chess. If the opponent offers you a very challenging game, then you also you both go into this flow state, and maybe you can do something that previously you wouldn't even dare to think that it could be done by you. So, yeah.
How about you, Josh?
I don't. Sorry,
That's fine. I just want to leave you a spot there if you wanted to jump in.
It's good. I will propose to move to the keys to achieve the flow state by John again. Yeah.
Video.
I will play a short clip. Let me check. Share screen. Okay, let's see. There you go. Hopefully it will start playing correctly. I will move us a little bit there. Okay.
How do you get into the flow? What are the informational constraints? The information has to be clear, it has to be tightly coupled, and error has to matter. The exact three conditions that Hogarth proposes for making sure you're doing good implicit learning are exactly the conditions that get people reliably into the flow state. And so we've published on that. What flow state is an evolutionary marker that you're getting a lot of insight, and you're getting a lot of insight within implicit learning that is probably tracking real causal relationships. So whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because chances are you're really figuring out the environment and the power to win. How do you get into the flow state? What are the informational constraints? The information has to be clear, it has to be tightly coupled, and error has to matter.
Okay. So the information has to be clear. It has to be tightly coupled, and the error has to matter. I will repeat it again. The information has to be clear. I'm repeating it for myself. Clear. The information has to be tightly coupled, and the error has to matter. What are your thoughts on that, Haris?
Yeah, basically, from what I understand, this ties back with the initial definition of flow by Csikszentmihalyi, and that it has to do with having clear goals. At least the first part, where John mentioned that information has to be clear. Regarding the second part, and John mentioned that it also information has to be tightly coupled. So I try to, let's say, make an association with this concentration and focus that Mihaly actually mentioned, because flow involves intense concentration and focus attention to the task at hand. And it allows for the actor or the agent or the individual, let's say, to be fully absorbed and immersed into the present moment while solving that task. And regarding the last point of John in that clip, that error has to matter, well, this also ties back because this has to do with this fault tolerance of the conscious agent. And maybe it has to do with our coping mechanism, but also our capacity for resilience, let's say. I always like to say that we human beings, we are always erring, we are making constantly mistakes. So this capacity to recognize that and to say that error matters, especially when you are into immersive activity, let's say, like solving a complex puzzle or engaging in a fruitful conversation, then it has to do with this notion of balancing between skill and challenge, and also this merging of the action and the awareness that one has. and that is where we get into this sense of losing self-consciousness. It's not like we are losing it 100%, but these are the markers. Like it feels like it's something exceptional, let's say. So this is how I understand this. Okay.
Thank you. Arjuna?
Like this approach to getting at it, like I'd have to see the wider context of how he's defining information.
I
'Cause
can give you
that's
an
like
example. So that thing, let's say you are rock climbing,
Mhm.
and every movement you do matters. You can
Yeah.
one wrong move, you die, or like you fall. Uh, you might survive. But everything matters. It's a hyper focused situation. The information you get is very clear. Everything you do has immediate reaction. Let's say
So
you
Part
get
of it
immediate feedback.
resonates, like immediate feedback or close contact with the thing, and having it push back in, like your action matters. So in the case of like physical things, you're pushing against it, or you're maintaining balance, you're moving in the world, you're rendering a pattern in the world, and so there could be a shape of the pattern that you're rendering if it's dance or something like that. You're interacting with physics. There's a lot of different things that you can flow with in the physical space, and that's like a great example of direct contact kind of things. But this example is a little less clear in my head when I think of examples of like flow where much of it is going on in your mind. Like the example of the chess players experiencing flow in the case of the air raid bomb. Because what's the pushback there? I mean, I guess they're pushing back against each other's play, but most of the time they're caught in their mind going over moves. Like they're interacting with the data in their head, the scenarios in their head. Anyway, I'll let Josh go from there.
Yeah, I was thinking about the example of the TV, like watching TV. Like in that case, you're not, like, air doesn't really matter, right? Like there is no, you're not getting that air feedback. Whereas like rock climbing, you are like, you're either climbing up the rock or you're not. And it's a challenge that's pushing you to the edge of your capacities, to your limits. And so there's something about, it's if you're climbing the rock and you're getting, you're seeing the right patterns, and you're like you're getting feedback that's like, hey, you're actually picking up on real patterns, then that feedback is like, okay, keep doing what you're doing. Like keep, like it's I think that's, if you're watching TV, you're not really getting that error signal, like, oh, you're doing it right or you're doing it wrong, kind of thing.
I think there can be like a lot, like if the TV, if the drama is making you cry or laugh or whatever, then you're really, like, you're in sync with it. You're going along with the thing that it's offering. But it doesn't respond to anything you do. There's one way. They're like, here's the narrative, and you can flow with the narrative as presented, or I guess you can choose, you cannot be in sync with what you're watching, but nothing you do is going to change that narrative. Whereas in the other cases, especially if it's a generative thing that you're doing, you've got to interact with the world or whatever it is you're interacting with, and then it has some agency to push back. So in the case of the TV watching, is like the degenerate case where all of the leading is set in the narrative of the program, and you don't have to do anything. You just, like, I'll go with whatever they pour into me. So it's like the degenerate case.
Yeah, like for example, when watching, let's say, a long form series like Game of Thrones, for example, especially if you watch not only with others but also by yourself, you are heavily invested. And when the story actually reaches one of those critical points where something huge is revealed, then of course you get into the flow. Like I remember that in a particular moment in that series. I don't know if any of you watched that one or not. You've watched it, okay? Then I'm gonna share it just briefly for Kara. You remember the hold the door scene?
Whose?
Hold the door.
Hold the door. Oh my God, the heartbreaking scene where Hodor was standing at the zombies. Oh,
Yes. I mean, in that sense,
heartbreaking.
for me at least, time got dissolved and I got fully immersed into that moment. So it was these critical points, let's say, when you follow the narrative, that you actually get heavily invested into it. So yeah.
So I would offer here, like, we get fully absorbed into that moment. So there's this fully absorptive state, but it's not interactive. But to whoever it was that was writing that script, I don't know who wrote that particular part, they had to interact with that. You know, they had to be sort of in the moment as they were choosing the script for each of the characters, you know, and timing and how that scene was going to be rendered. And I would imagine like the creation of that scene, whoever's writing that in the moment, they got to experience some degree of flow. And obviously, you know, that is interactive for them with the script.
That's very interesting take from the perspective of the author, let's say. That's very interesting to also consider that because we are talking about a product, let's say. In this case, it's a series, but to have the insight gained from the perspective of the actual author or even the producer, it adds a nice additional layer to the whole conversation. Nice.
Yeah, because
Josh, would you like to add something? Yeah.
the author he's making meaning, whereas like if you're just a viewer, you're just receiving that meaning, I guess. But
I think the thing there that was like what made that scene, not to get too far into it, important was that there were a lot of threads that came together. Like you've been watching for a long time, and there was a lot of priming from a lot of different things, and then they culminated, and you got to suddenly it was like revealed how things intersected, and you were just sort of set on this journey of and some people I suppose saw it coming. And that, I think that cascading realization of things is like having insights, even though they were in this case sort of structured for you by the author, but he set up sort of the conditions that allowed somebody to be that absorbed in that moment.
I must say that Hodor was a really beloved character, and for many seasons and many books, people did not know why the only word he's talking and saying is Hodor. And then the moment that scene came, it's
Are you about to do a spoiler alert? Don't spoiler alert it.
Okay, I will spoil another movie. In that case, I wanted to make a distinction between the generative, participatory kind of sort of engagement, which is the flow state. You generate, you kind of contribute to your own meaning and purpose, and you're fully immersed in it, and the things you do matter, and the things you do actually produce the result, versus watching a TV show. And you're still fully immersed in the TV show. You cannot influence what happens to, let's say, Hodor, but you really want to, in a way, because you engaged with the characters for long enough, you grew to feel attached to them. I can tell you there was a brilliant British BBC TV series called 2000 Acres of Sky, early 2000s. And there was a brilliant actor, Paul Kay, who also played in Game of Thrones, by the way. He played in the last seasons. So Paul Kay, and I always liked him. I just like, there is something about his face that looks so familiar. I don't know, and I always felt like he could be my best buddy, could be my best friend. So in the TV show 2000 Acre of Sky, he plays a best friend of a protagonist. And at some point, there is the whole village gathers and says, Kenny is gone. His name is Kenny. And the whole village is wondering what happens to Kenny. And then they show Kenny went for a swim, and Kenny crashed on an island. And there was a tire. He was cold. He used the lighter. He started up the fire. He got warm. People saved him. And then that's not what happened. Kenny crashed on the island. The lighter was wet. He tried to stop the fire, but it didn't work. He was freezing, and still somehow he survived and got saved. But then that's not what happened. Like they kept replaying the scenario by removing each part. They played it like 8 times, and each time they would make it worse and worse and worse. And you're fully immersed, and you love that character. You have seen him for several seasons. Of course, at the end, spoiler alert, they just show they found Kenny, the whole village. Oh my God, we all laugh. They found Kenny, and Kenny is dead. And by that point, I'm like completely devastated on the floor. I'm crying because like the entire TV episode, I was trying to save Kenny. In my brain, I was like, what if I did that? What if I did that? Like I kept replaying that.
Yeah.
I was immersed with my whole being without being able to help. So
I think that's the key difference. Like you are interacting with the TV, with the drama. Like you laughing, crying, getting tense, getting excited, feeling the successes and the failures of the characters. Like you are interacting in that sense, but it's all scripted. Like what you do does not change the narrative of what's being presented. And so I guess that's what I mean when I say it's kind of a degenerate case, because you have that. A lot of the aspects that you would get from an actual flow situation that is generative, where you are interacting in a way that actually alters the world in which you're witnessing. But in the case of television, it's like a simulacrum of that. And I think it feels good. It feels like you're living it.
Maybe it's like you're still like you're putting yourself in the position of the character you're watching. So, and if the character is in the flow with the narrative, then it's like you're kind of with the character. Like you become the character essentially.
But what you do, you personally on the couch, doesn't change what happens. So you're watching someone else flow, as it were.
That was such a strong experience for me. I remember every detail of the couch I was sitting in, every detail of the room. And I watched that episode in 2004. That's how long ago. It's like that one episode had such a huge impression on me. So there are a lot of similarities with the flow state, that immersive state, the kind of PTSD kind of sort of thing that I keep reliving that moment. Each time I think about it, it brings me sadness. But it is not a flow state, because I cannot do anything. Like nothing I do matters in a way. So what are your thoughts on that? Am I understanding flow correctly? Harris.
Yeah, basically, flow it's a very complex phenomenon, let's say, and it is also fascinating, a fascinating psychological state, and I guess it can happen in various, let's say, situations. As we said before, in terms of music, in terms of art, in terms of sports. So, in terms of problem solving, general problem solving, let's say. But I think what John actually added into that definition that of the flow state is that it cannot also enhance our meaning in life. So when we enter into this, when we immerse into such flow states, we get we gain something out of it. So I don't want to disregard, let's say, or discard the experience that arises from passively watching, let's say, a movie or a series, because let me give you another example. If I go and see a live performance of a pianist that he's great and he's competing at a highest level, even if I watched it later on via YouTube, I will still feel the very same things, and I will still be able to enter into that same flow state because in a way the pianist entered into the flow state and invited everyone else listening to also join him. So it can be replicated, let's say. Nothing, of course, is as vibrant as being part and face-to-face and experiencing something live, but it doesn't mean that these type of effects cannot be replicated, let's say, in an asynchronous way. So that's what I wanted to add.
I think the distinction is really interesting, and I don't think that just watching somebody be in a flow state is the same for you. Like, I think we mimic it, and I think we have a lot of the same aspects, and certainly the full absorption can still be there, but you don't have that interactiveness if you're just watching something. So not even a little. So like, you interact with it in that you emote and you feel things, and it's going to change your mind possibly. So there's something that goes on in your head, but you're not interacting with the world. You're interacting, I guess, in that case, with information, but it's not. You don't have any impact on it. So there's no dance. And I think there's like a requirement here, at least for the proper definition of flow, that there be something that you do that changes the thing you're interacting with. So like, if you're dancing with your dance partner and you like lead into some position, you're like, well, that's where we're going. And then the other person has to do something with that. And you have to find where that center of balance is going to go. And the two of you end up doing something hopefully nice. But you have to adapt to the other thing. If you were dancing with a robot that always did exactly the same thing and was emotive, like it just did exactly the same moves every time, then you wouldn't really be dance. You wouldn't really be flowing with it.
Yeah, just to clarify a bit, I wasn't bringing that example in the case to let's say to pinpoint down another case of experiencing flow. I'm just saying that there are some cases where the player or the pianist or the performer, they themselves immerse so deeply that there is a spillover effect that reaches outwards to the audience. This is what I'm just trying to point out.
I think that's definitely the case too. You can even listen to complicated music, like many layered music, and see something in there that the long dead composer had rendered. And so, that's whose flow state is that? Yours or theirs?
Josh, would you like to add something?
I think humans have an ability to internalize the experience of others. And so when someone's in a flow state, you can really feel it. Like you can feel that they're on the edge, There's like and when you're watching like everything happen, it's like I mean, there's like a sense that it's like it's just happening. Like it like there is no future. Like it's just like there's just the now. There's like the nowness that's unfolding. And that's both when you're performing and when you're watching. There's just you don't really exactly know what's going to happen. It's just there's just this unfolding. And it's same when you're performing. There's just this unfolding. There's just this oneness. So yeah, I guess those are similarities.
I wanted to bring an example of the street performer who was so immersed in his performance that he actually captivated the audience. It's to Harris's point. I don't know if I can share screen that. I will look for it later. It's street performer who accidentally got another audition. So a random guy joined. The guy was high. And so that guy, kind of with no boundaries, he sang his interpretation of Feeling Good. So she started kind of feeling good. And then he enters, says like, may I? And then he crushes it. Amazing performance where he's listening to her, he's listening to the crowd, he's paying attention to everybody. And even I, as I was watching it, I was like fully in there, immersed. That's how much that his flow state kind of got to me. Yeah, and I find it really magic.
I think this really points out a very big difference between like experiencing something yourself and watching something on a video. Like you can get a lot of the same emotion from it, but it didn't happen to you and it's not the same. But we do it so often that we don't make a huge distinction there. Watching somebody in a state of flow is not experiencing the state of flow yourself. And I don't think it's some lofty thing that is that hard that people, like only rare cases do people after thousands of years of meditation can achieve flow. That's not the case. This isn't one of those things.
Also, if you're watching, you can feel a sense of amazement of, oh my God.
Sure.
But when you're doing it, you're not like, amazing yourself. Like hopefully
you're not interacting with it. Like you could do whatever you want and it's still going to turn out the same way. You pressed play and it's going to play. Nothing you do changes it. And so therefore you're not really interacting with it. You're absorbing it. You're receiving it passively and then having an experience in your head, which is some simulation. Kind of what you do with reality too, but still you're not interacting with it. Whereas when you're doing a real world thing, or even with another person or other people, now there's an interaction. And so I would argue that that is different. But it's interesting to look at this distinction. Are you back, Kara?
Okay. Yes, I have some internet problems. Yeah, I think Starlink really helps us out. I wanted to share the last clip. And
Shout out Elon
so,
Musk.
did you know about this kind of sort of clip? Let me see if I can present it.
Yeah, drum roll.
The-
Brrr.
I will move us down there. Move. Yes, we are down there. There we go. So, you know this about the flow state?
What are the contexts that generate flow that transfers like that powerfully? This is the context where the flow stays locked into that particular context.
That is a great question. And where have you gone with that?
One of the things I think has to do with whether or not the skill set that's being trained in the particular practice is relatively indispensable in domains other than the situation you're in. It even shows up in the metaphors. We talk about balancing equations and justice being the balancing of things and scales. And so you want to find a set of skills that has that inbuilt potential.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Okay. That
So-
ended rather abruptly.
Yes, it did.
Okay. So I guess John's point is the skills. Thank you. Oh, nice.
I would say, just if I can comment on what he said, I think one thing he's referring to there is the idea of transferability, that in the case of, let's say, video games, you're none of the skills that you're doing when you're playing video games can be transferred, are general, can be generalized to different contexts. Whereas, like, if you're doing Tai Chi, you're like learning skills of, like, you're learning how to balance, and you're learning all of these like kind of a gentle movements, and you're like there's like a bunch of things that you're doing that can be transferred to other contexts. So I think that's what he was talking about, maybe.
Matthew, what do you
Sure.
think about the skills and the flow?
The idea of exapting is the word that comes to mind, where you develop a skill in the course of, say, trying to do things where you do feel flow or something like it. And the thing that occurs to me is, trying to react in a positive, generative way to what is there in the moment and not get stuck on something small. So I always think of like river metaphors, where you're running a river and there are certain rocks and there's certain currents and there's a tree over there and you can't go that way and whatnot. But there's a lot of different ways you could go. So you have some agency in how you make your way down the river, but there's a river and that water has a lot of force on its own. And so you're engaging with it in kayaking. Whitewater kayaking is to find a good way to get down the river using what's there, using the current and the eddies and your momentum, and where you are in the boat, in the river, where you need to be on the next step. And so you have to kind of route plan your way down the river. So you have to interact with it in that sense. You have to make all these little decisions about where to go, how strong to paddle there. Oh, I need to turn this way. Oh, I want to drop into this thing backwards because I got to go out that way. You have to interact with what's there. And long way of saying, I think that those skills of sort of looking at what's there and saying, what is a useful way to get through this, to navigate this, those kind of skills that you use in flowing, like in the present moment flow in a lot of different things, you can adapt to other things conversationally, how you deal with your own thoughts and anger meditatively. I think a lot of those same skills about how do I work around what is in a way that's not going to block me up, that sort of makes the best of how the world is, that is an example of like a exaptive skill that you could get from trying to practice flow. Maybe.
I'm thinking about the skills. So if you practice your skills, your focus, like it goes into kind of procedural. It goes in your subconscious in a way. Your body already knows you repeated it enough to know how to do things, and it frees your mind to focus better. So with practiced skills, you have more kind of agency in a way. So with let's say with the singing, if my voice is trained, I don't have to think, can I take this note or can't I take this note? I'm thinking more or less, okay, while I sing this song, I will take this and this and this and this note to convey my message. And when my skills aren't practiced, I was like, this note would be good, but I can't take it, let's say. Or like, I would be worried about that. So practiced skills do enable the flow. I guess that was the point. So what are your comments on that?
Yeah, basically, I think there needs to be a balance between the challenge and the skill. So for flow to happen, to emerge, let's say. So flow is most likely to occur when the level of challenge in the activity matches the individual levels of skill. So if the task, let's say, is too easy or it is too difficult, then it can lead to us being bored or being anxious, let's say. So you need to go after that sweet spot, let's say, of optimal, let's say, complexity and skill set. So something like that. I can see it also happening with kids playing games, and especially when a younger child, let's say, tries to play a game that their older, let's say, sibling is excels at, and they get really frustrated because of the difficulty, or the other way around, where it's too easy for them and they just get bored. So, something like that.
I wonder if that being at the point of challenge is not part of the being fully absorbed, like having all of your attention focused. So if you're bored, then presumably you have more capability that's not focused, that kind of thing. But if you're at the edge, like it takes everything you got to speed wise and otherwise to keep up with it, then you're like, okay, this is as much as I can handle. And then you do that for a while and you realize, oh, okay, now I can handle that much. What about this much? And, that's that challenge line.
Oh.
That notion of level comes up.
Yeah.
Like optimal anxiety was mentioned in the comments.
Yeah, shout out Mills. I'm thinking now about pickup artists.
Uh-oh.
So, yes. After here is Valeria. Hi. Welcome. So the pickup artist who has no skill, or the pickup artist who has a skill. Talk about that. So the pickup artist with maximum amount of skill, he knows how to behave. He knows how to react. He already practiced all the kind of most of the scenarios, and so he comes in and he just smooth and everything is fine. And his level of anxiety is pretty low. He more or less he feels alive. He feels excited about the new challenge. Versus the beginner pickup artist who didn't really practice this scenario. He feels very kind of insecure, and he goes in, and he can't flow basically. Yeah. So that's what I thought about.
That's an interesting example, because I don't know too much about pickup artistry, but I do know that that there was like development in pickup artistry, like where the original pickup artists like started off like kind of using like rehearsed canned lines on females, like just like kind of lines that they memorized or whatever. And I think that developed into like something that was more spontaneous and like actually like learning certain rather than kind of rehearsing lines like an actor. It's like you're just like we're getting really good at conversation. So I think the first one doesn't really, if you're just reciting canned lines, you're not really generating a conversation, right? There's nothing generative about that. You're just rehearsing. So I don't know where I was gonna go there. I don't know where that is supposed to go, but
it's okay. There was a good comment from Valeria. She said, according to John, I will put it up again. According to John, flow is a form of insight cascade. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, it's like a series of you know.
Oh, you're doing everything right. Keep doing what you're doing, like from the second clip.
Yeah.
Trains your capacity for insight. And then the more you get of that, the more insight you're able to get. Right?
Yeah.
And me at home, pick up automata.
It's funny. I was listening to a champion from a mathematics Olympiad talking about his process of actually trying to compete at that level. And he just said that, you just start by solving a variety of different mathematical problems, and eventually you pick up different techniques. So when you encounter a new novel problem, you will have enough of techniques developed to be able to actually solve it like without any problem. So what you have to do is just to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and maybe it has to do with placing the pieces in the right order. Let's say. So it has to do with insight, and it's something that it can be developed. Alkernot, before that fine comment from Valeria, he mentioned something similar about this cascading realization of things that arises out of the flow state. And I think it has to do with this notion. that flow is a form of insight cascade. It has a snowballing effect, let's say.
Right, where it's like you gain an insight, and then that leads to more insights, and then that leads to more insights. So that your capacity for insight is increasing with each and every insight. It's like that.
Yeah,
It's like
that's
a
what I
wheel
get
that's
a
spinning
lot.
faster, a wheel that's spinning faster and faster and faster and faster. Like maybe.
Actually, that
I don't know that I would. Insight cascade. I can see that being like you can be in a state of flow and have that, but I don't know that they're like one-on-one. Like I think there are cases where like, I'm thinking of some of the sports things. I don't know if framing that as an insight in every moment is necessarily right. So maybe there's a variety of different kinds of cascade here or flow. Or you could reframe like the ability to interact with I'm thinking like a person running a ball in a football game and having to, dodge around the other players, being in perfect balance and momentum and the moment and awareness of where everybody is, where the ball is and physics and like that's their experience. I don't know if casting to say like, oh, they have to have like a cascade of insight in every moment that leads to more insights. That's feels like pushing things into the word insight that don't belong there.
I just wanted to add, Kara, can you highlight that latest comment from Valeria, please? Yeah, I really like that one.
That one?
Yes, I really love that one because it gives an extra dimension. It's not only, maybe this is what distinguishes insight from the flow state, because it is all about a series of insights of ahas, let's say, that they eventually give you a laughter. So you are happy and joyful because you are into, you came into that recursive relevance realization, as Mills put it also.
I know that when I'm meditating, that's what it feels like. It does feel like I'm like when I start out meditating, I have like very little insights, but then as I continue, I get more and more and more and more and more, and then I get like my ability to be insightful in a meditation session is increased, and then I'm just like I do feel like it's maybe, I don't know, it depends on the thing, on the task, maybe like what Algernon is saying or what Matthew was saying, like when you're playing soccer, I'm not sure you're getting a bunch of insights, but I do know when I'm meditating, I feel like I'm getting a bunch of insights. So it's like different thing.
I was thinking back to the example earlier about you having to have something that you're interacting with. And I'm wondering in the case of insight cascade, what you're interacting with. I guess your own thoughts. But there's not like another physical entity in the world during that moment that you're having to react to or where error matters necessarily.
I mean, you're interacting with your body, with your thoughts.
What I wanted to add at this point is that sometimes things click, sometimes they double click, sometimes they triple click. So
triple click, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, when something comes into, I'll say clarity, even though it could be a delusion, but where things like connect, we get like a something that goes, oh, that's good. Like that connected with that. Like, that makes it more true. And then a third thing comes in, you're like, oh, now wait. Like all three of these things all connect in a good way.
There's
Now I'm
something here.
really sure of it. Yeah, there's something here. And then another thing fits in. You're like, oh, wow. It's like, look at all this. And that is like a cascade,
Yeah.
insight cascade. Things coming into concordance or coherence.
Into coherence, yeah.
I like what Valeria wrote. It is not propositional insight, it is a shifting in the way of seeing the world that makes us more efficient in engaging with it. And then the second half, like, better throw the ball this way or move my body, like in the case of rock climbing. So, like, we get the feedback basically from the universe or from the world. It's a constant feedback that tells us, keep doing what you're doing it right. Like, and Mills is participatory knowing informed by a new perspective of knowing.
No.
Wow. What do you guys think about that one?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Like to the extent, if I understand all of that correctly, the 4 Ps, guys, check out. What's it? A rebuttal. Rebuttal. Or instead of focusing on this player, I can. Okay, it's not a rebuttal. Nice. Okay, what do you guys think?
I'm seeing there's an interesting differential here between where you're interacting with the world. There seems to be pretty easy. I feel comfortable saying like that was a flow experience. Where it's all in your head, I'm wondering, like, because the interaction level, the same thing we were talking about with the television, that doesn't feel like it's like you're not truly participating with something else. Maybe you could cast it as 2 parts of your mind. You're interacting with your own thoughts. That does feel a little bit outside of what would be the normal flow. I guess flow is like with something else. Like a dance with something else. So it's got to be something outside of you that you are interacting with, that your actions change, and then its actions change how you react. And so it feels like that needs to, for me, to be part of it. So the cases where there's physical things going on, that seems easy. Music, jazz, outstanding example, a jazz session. But pure mental ones, that's interesting to think about. Where exactly is, are we flowing with our own thoughts in meditation?
I don't think there is pure mental. When I am interacting with, when I am meditating, I am and I'm feeling the sensations in my body. I'm interacting with real things in my body, like with real sensations in my body. That's other than, it feels other than, like there's an otherness to it, right? It's an environment that I am interacting with and that I'm in flow with. And that's, there's still an I, and there's still an environment, there's still an agent, there's still an arena. I feel like that.
No, I would like to push a bit, let's say, from the domain of mathematics, and because it's something that I am also into. For me, the last time I experienced this type of flow, in terms of considering a particular mathematical problem, it was when I figured out and I found out a particular new for me proving technique. So, for example, I was studying a particular mathematician, a French one, François Vieta, and he developed a proving technique called Vieta jumping. Okay, it's something technical, but it was so elegant that it got me excited. And when I actually tried to solve a series of problems based on his proving technique, I also experienced, in a way, what he felt when he developed this technique. So there is some form of transference, let's say, from person to person, or from the author to the audience, or the producer to the viewers. So I just wanted to share that experience with everyone.
Okay, I guess it connects to the meaning making, actually. So in the first clip we played, it's in the description to this video. Please check it out. He said the things that we are doing in the flow state, they are contributing to our meaning making, and it might seem, for example, that when you work and you apply that new technique, let's say it's I think it's the jumping, that way of proving, that elegant way of proving that he developed, right? It's a skill. It's a special continuous way of actions that you can apply to your own. So it's like your own skill enhancement in a way, right? It feels to me that if you are able to apply the things you learned from him and like practice it towards like it got it easier for you to come to the result, right? Like it's a mathematical proving technique. So you have a problem, you need to do the jumping kind of I guess
yes.
Yeah.
And just to clarify a bit, it is so an elegant way and an elegant proving technique that it is also called root flipping. That is like a trick he developed that not only gives you one solution, but it gives you, it opens the whole horizon, and it gives you by this jumping technique the whole range of solutions. So it opens the vistas for a complete range of different solutions. So that's why I found it interesting and shared it with everyone. And I am certain that it has to do with this, with him experiencing this joy, coming up with this effect. So with this technique.
I get it. So while coming up with the technique, he experienced this aha moment. Oh my God, I developed it, and it's so elegant, it's beautiful. And each time he transferred that skill to other people, oh my God, I just learned it and I see it and it's beautiful and I also can apply it. And now my hands are freed. Now I can actually do my things triple faster, 4 times faster. I get it. I get it that way. So we have a question from Mills, and I would like Algernon to respond to that first, and then you guys contributing to it. You're muted, man.
Thanks. I was just reading this thing. I'm curious about the exiting of flow state, both phenomenology is there satisfaction or distress, and the mechanics of how it winds down. It's kind of interesting to think about that. Because we were focusing, what are the conditions that would lead to flow state? I'm not sure we really define them. But like, what do you witness when you're like, oh, crap, that was the end of the flow state? And that's interesting. To look at that probably would tell you something about the flow state. Like what ceased? Where you're like, oops, I was in flow and now I'm not. Like what changed? And then you're like, okay, that probably is a necessary element of it. Trying to think of like one of the examples for me. Physically tiring. That's what I usually feel when I'm coming out of a flow state. I guess there's like an exhaustion, because that kind of sustained attention to something, focused attention, while it's good in the moment and you don't even notice the moment's going by. Usually I would say when I'm coming out of something that we call flow state, aside from whatever the insights you might have encountered, their skills you might have gained and all that, I think there's a feeling of just being tired where it takes some effort and energy to participate in the flow state. And so one of the phenomenology I would say is having to let go because you don't have enough energy to keep at it.
Yeah, for me, that exit that Mills is mentioning here, and in terms of phenomenology, it has to do with the temporal dimension. So when I am into the flow state, I feel that I lose track of time. And when I exit, I understand it because this time dilation stops and I enter back into normal flow of time, let's say. And sometimes I also feel it when I enter into a conversation with a good old friend that I meet after some many years, let's say, and I feel that time just passed by really quickly. So maybe hours and hours felt like minutes. Yeah. So for me, that's the indicators. Like when you go back into normality.
Another thing is when you're back to normal, you're like, you can be self-conscious, right? You can be self-conscious. You can be, how do you say, meta-conscious of. You can look at the experience you just had and be like, oh, that was cool, right?
Yeah, and then you're like, I'm not in it anymore.
Yeah, I'm not in it anymore. But when you're in it, you're not self-conscious. You're not thinking about like, oh, I'm in the flow state, guys. You're just in the flow state.
It kind of prohibits that by its own definition, right? Because if you had more attention to spare to be thinking about the thing you were doing in a sort of propositional meta state, that you wouldn't be fully engaged with the thing. Like there's still some part of you that was able to both do the thing you were theoretically in flow and absolutely paying full attention to, while at the same time paying attention to looking at it. If that made sense.
Wait, could you repeat the first part? I didn't hear it.
The idea that you've got to split your attention to look at it. If I'm analyzing my own thoughts, or if I'm analyzing what it is I'm doing in flow, then I'm not fully engaged in the thing. Like I had extra capacity that I could think about what I was doing at the same time as doing it. And we do that a lot, I think, or at least intersperse them, so it appears that way to us.
Right, your attention is split now.
But in full flow, by definition, all of your attention, at least I guess in idealized flow.
Thank you. I immediately started thinking about people who go into flow states during the shamanic kind of meditative, like they completely lose the sense of self, the sense of sense of self, basically. And they are free, and their brains are free, and then they go and kind of generate all sorts of insights. I guess I feel like I would like to rewatch the part about the shamans. Oh, thank you, Mills. Thank you. So I would like you guys to reflect on the shamans and the flow. I haven't been a shaman. I kind of have, but like I would not like to go into it right now. and then we will close up. And yeah. So, Harris, what do you think about shamans in the flow state?
Yeah. I don't know if I am the best one to comment on that, but from my own research, let's say, into reading about shamanism, because shamanism used to be the ancient way, let's say, and it used to be the way for those shamans to perform, let's say, in the context of a small community like a village, what it was called dramatic healing. So they were entering into a drama, like a theater, and they were play acting with the audience in an effort to enact what is called as the eternal as if in the actual moment. So they were trying to capture this as if and turn it into the as is, to put it in more technical terms. So in the act of enactment, let's say, they were entering into the ritual part of reality that it mimics, let's say, the ancient forms of theater or drama or performances, in an effort to not only enter into the flow state, but also to perform some type of healing for the audience. This is what I understand about the shamanic journeys.
I'll take the next one, I guess. I don't have much to say about shamanism because I don't have any personal experience with it. And it would just be, I don't know, just kind of projecting into a space of imagining what that would be like, and then intersecting that with what I think is my own experience of flow. So I don't know how much is there for me to go into. Not much. So I guess I'll just say like what I'm taking away from all this. The idea, I think we can cultivate flow, and I think there are things that you can exact from that state. Depends what you're doing. But like providing yourself an environment where you're not going to be interrupted for a period of time. So minimizing the interruption circuit. We were talking about like falling out of the flow state. It occurred to me that at the moment of interruptions is almost always where you find yourself. Like you're in a flow state, and you're like, oh, and then the phone rang, or I'm in a flow state, and then somebody came in the room or whatever. So like if you wanted to create fertile space for flow, find something that completely engages you, that challenges you, maybe reaches beyond your capabilities if it's a technical thing, and where you won't be interrupted for some period of time, where you can give it your full attention if you can hold it.
I would say I agree with you, but there's something about what the shamans are doing that's disruptive. That's like they're trying to break their everyday consciousness, and get into like John describes it as altered states of consciousness. So I don't know the connection between this, exactly the connection between the altered state of consciousness and this enhanced capacity for flow. I don't, there's a connection there. I'm not sure what it is, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we can only speculate. I don't think we are anthropologists to go and study life. These shamans, let's say. By the way, the only other thing I can add is that in terms of this shamanic tradition, one of the next, let's say, iterations was what is called the Druids. or the druides. So they were playing the exact same role, but in a different culture. So it's the shamans, is the druids, and so forth, and it goes on. I don't know, Kara, do you know anyone else?
The druids or shamans. The reason why I asked, so I go to kind of circle singing group, let's say, and we have to be the most important part of it is to be here and now, to be aware of every person, to keep eyes open, but to let go of self. So there should be no kind of thinking about what happened last week, what will happen tomorrow. It should be exactly here and now with the people. And then at some point, I remember we decided to play kind of ancient, to play into ancient tradition. So there would be somebody who is beating the drum, and we all kind of get synchronized in a way, channel each other completely. And I remember that as absolutely bizarre state. There was no substances involved. It was just like I felt like I was almost floating, and the music was flowing really easily. For the people outside who have seen us, there was just fear. They were just terrified of us because they said like the sounds that came out were animal sounds. They were, to us in the group, it felt like we are in unison, we all singing, and it's beautiful. To the rest of people, it was terrifying. They could not understand what we were doing at all. And all of us, after that experience, came out exhausted, excited, happy, kind of. And there was one girl who said, you know what? I actually feel like at least 10 of my childhood traumas got healed. And I have seen kind of that understanding with people around. They were like, yeah, I was throwing out kind of the past ancient traumas too. And I was like, that was not a requirement, but it also kind of what I was doing. Like I was throwing out the things into with the drum beat. So all of us kind of did the same thing, kind of broke the rules, but every single one of us. And we all had that understanding. And I can't describe how good it felt. And each time it was generative. We were completely immersed. All the kind of check boxes of flow were there. And that's the reason why I wanted to ask if there is, to your knowledge, a connection between this shamanic state and the state of flow. So we did start as animal. There were animal, like some of us was the wolf, some of us was the owl, like ow, like, and those things, the voices would come out as well.
That was an owl sound? I just want to be sure.
The owl sound is
Okay, that was better.
But how?
Apart from the drumming and the singing and the play acting, let's say, or the enacting, sometimes, from what I know, there is also a concoction involved. Like the shaman prepares like a drink, not something extreme. Maybe it's something like a cacao, like a drink that they share with the rest, in order to, let's say, bring everyone into the same level, in order to enter the same flow state, to call it like that. But once again, this is like a speculation. So
Right.
I think part of the conversation, when we is I think we have to tie the idea of disruption with insight. So like you think of the 9 dot problem, where you're framing the problem, right, in a particular way, and then in order to get the insight to solve the problem, you have to break that frame. And so you have to disrupt the way you're framing the problem. And so I think what the shamans are doing is that I think I'm trying to make this connection between what the shamans are doing and the expanded insights, the being in the flow state, that something about the disruption of everyday normalcy and everyday consciousness that enhances this insight capacity through disruption.
Basically, I can add something here in order to also try to tie everything up. We talk about cinema, we mentioned theater, we mentioned the shamanic performances. I think everything ties back to a very particular notion called the suspension of disbelief. So that's the common thread between everything. Like you enter into this, let's call it alternate state of reality, just for the lack of a better term. And you either the performer or even the whole audience, let's say, if we are talking about an interactive session or performance, they enter into this, they break into novel ground in a way. So, and sometimes if the enjoying the experience allows room for extreme balance of emotions. So maybe it's not only joy and laughter. Maybe it's also a sense of awe. Maybe it's more things together. So it's a different emotional palette that is not usually available to each individual person. But when they enter into that flow state, and with maybe with this associated suspension of disbelief, it is we are able to access it, let's say, and even learn and gain from it. So, thank you.
I was thinking about the group activity. So if all of us gather and we all agree what we will do right now, let's say it's kind of sandbox activity. So we all agree on this adult play that we will do, like circle singing or jamming, musical jamming. And it takes that level of attention to others, what others are doing, reading the room is extremely important. So if a person is elsewhere and like not in a state of this hyper focus, the entire room feels it. And if the group actually completely on one wavelength, let's say, it's felt by everyone.
It resonates, let's say.
Resonates. Yeah. So I would like to close the session, but before we go, I would invite checkouts. So, Algernon, what are you leaving today with? Perhaps any open questions as well?
There's always something more about this. I guess I'll just end on there's something that feels wholesome about being so fully engaged in the moment, in the present moment, with something, anything really, that you feel really connected to the world. You feel very anchored to the world. Everything fits, at least for the time being. And there's something really comforting about that. I don't know if that gives you skills or whatever, but that's something that's just joyful about being in the state of flow. And I think occasionally touching that, even if there's nothing else that you gain from the experiences, it's worth it. And I'll pass to Joshua.
I really like the distinction that we made between like watching TV versus like engaging in an activity. I think that helps elucidate maybe what flow state is, what the different, is the way in which watching television is in a sense mimicking the flow state, but it's not actually the flow state. It's not a perfect compare it. Like you're not fully interacting with something. You're not generating anything. You're just an observer of the unfolding narrative.
Okay. So from my side, I wanted to add that as far as I understand it, John Vervaeke describes the flow state as the place where individuals are not only fully engaged in a particular task, but also deeply connected to the larger narrative of their lives. And this is an interesting take that extends Mihaly's notion of the state of flow. And maybe it also gives it an existential flavor, let's say, there, trying to make it part of our journey, let's say. And the last thing I wanted to add is like I invite everyone to listen to that performance from Yu Shang Lin playing Liszt's 12 Transcendental Etudes, number 12. I've shared it in the live chat. I really love that one. For me, it's one of probably the best performance on the one of my favorite songs. I hope everybody also enjoys it.
I look forward to listening to it. And if anybody wants to play it at home and play along, then they too can experience the flow.
Yeah.
Good luck.
And that was part of a competition.
Yeah.
And the reason that particular performer won, it's because one of the things they judge is the amount of pause you make between each different, let's say, number of pieces. So he actually went with the flow and did the whole thing. He played that one perfectly, and before he had played a very long one, complex one, and he took a minimal amount of pause.
So you get kind of extra credit for just kind of going through the entire performance.
Yeah.
Thank you. I would like to encourage people to check out the YouTube channels. I will add of Upcycle Club, also The Mouse, and Joshua also has a YouTube channel. Meals, Valeria has a YouTube channel. No videos yet, but might. Please give them like, subscribe, check out their videos as soon as they appear. The Mouse. And I feel enriched in my knowledge of what flow is, what the state of flow is, the distinctions, the part about participating in the world, seeing the larger picture, adding to your meaning, a sense of meaning. Also, what stuck with me the most is the saying from the first video that state of flow is more it's more rewarding, feels way more rewarding than state of pleasure. So state of pleasure, one thing, but state of flow feels rewarding. And that gave me a lot to think about. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.